Alright, so now we're going to move on to positive angles and negative angles. So remember when we were looking at angles in standard position, and every angle that I drew counterclockwise. That's because those are positive angles. We do have negative angles though, and that's okay. And just as I mentioned, we have angles that are larger than 360 degrees or larger than 2 pi. So if we want to draw or approximate an angle of 140 degrees, and this is in standard position, so I know my initial side would be here and my terminal side would be somewhere around, let's say, here. So that would be approximately 140 degrees. Draw or approximate the angle of negative 280 degrees. So again, I have my initial side on the positive side of the x-axis, and now my terminal side, well, negative 280 degrees, I know I'm going to go clockwise. Starting here, this would be negative 90, so 90, 180, 270, so 280 is going to be something like about there. So that would be an angle of approximately negative 280 degrees. Notice that for both of these angles, I could represent them with a negative angle or a positive angle respectively as well. So 140 degrees positive is this angle, but there's also this angle here. Well, if this is 140 degrees, then this negative angle would be negative 220 degrees. But notice they have the same initial and terminal side. Same thing over here, that if this is negative 280 degrees, then this angle here would be positive 80 degrees. This is going to come into play a little bit later as well. These are what we call coterminal angles. Don't worry about that until we talk about that. But we want to understand the difference, or how we can draw both a positive and a negative angle with the same initial and terminal side. Alright, so now I want you to try these two on your own. So draw or approximate the angle of 4 radians, and draw or approximate the angle of negative 17 pi 12ths radians. So go ahead, pause the video, draw those angles, unpause when you're ready to check. Okay, so hopefully your pictures look something like this. Again, these are complete approximations, so if it's not exactly like this, that's okay, as long as the initial and terminal side are close. Well, the initial side should be exact. The terminal side should be relatively close. I know that halfway around a circle is pi radians, which is 3.14. 4 is a little bit larger than that, so it's going to be somewhere here in the third quadrant. 17 pi 12ths. Well, 18 pi 12ths, I'm sorry, negative 17 pi 12ths would be really close to, but not quite 3/4 of the way around the circle, because negative 18 pi 12ths would be 3/4 of the way around the circle. So negative 17 is a little bit less than that, so I'm going to be somewhere here in the second quadrant. Alright, last thing we're going to talk about are acute angles, obtuse angles, complementary angles, and supplementary angles. These should all be familiar to you, so we want to make sure we understand the definitions though, because it's very important, especially acute angle, because this comes up a lot. So an acute angle is an angle between 0 and 90 degrees, or between 0 and pi halves radians. Notice that if it's between 0 and 90 degrees, or 0 and pi halves radians, it is a positive number. So we don't have negative acute angles. Obtuse angle is an angle between 90 and 180 degrees, or between pi halves and pi radians. Complementary angles are two angles whose sum is 90 degrees or pi halves. Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is 180 degrees or pi radians. So if it exists, I want you to find the complement and the supplement of the following angles. Leave your answers as exact values if that comes up as an issue. So go ahead and pause the video, find the supplement and complement to each if it exists. Unpause when you are ready to check your work. Alright, so for the first one here, the complementary angle is 18 degrees and the supplementary angle is 108 degrees. You can see my work on how I did that. 90 minus 17 is 18, 180 minus 72 is 108. For the next one, 103 degrees is larger than 90 degrees, therefore there is no complement. The supplement, 180 minus 103 is 77 degrees. Here, this is in radians because it does not have the degree symbol, that's how I know. So the complementary angle is going to be pi halves minus 1. I can't really simplify that at all. You could get a common denominator and make this pi minus 2 all over 2, but it's still in terms of pi. So you can just leave your answer like that. That's an exact answer. And remember, I said exact answers. If I said round to 3 decimal places, we can type this into our calculator. The supplementary angle would be pi minus 1. Again, there's not really anything you can do there, so just leave it as pi minus 1. For the next one, here we can do a little bit of work. So the complementary angle will be pi halves minus 3 pi sevenths. When I subtract fractions, I can get a common denominator. The common denominator is 14, so pi over 2 becomes 7 pi over 14, and 3 pi over 7 becomes 6 pi over 14. 7 minus 6 is 1 pi over 14. So the complementary angle is pi over 14. For the supplement, we do pi minus 3 pi sevenths. Again, get a common denominator, which in this case will be 7. 7 pi over 7 minus 3 pi over 7 is 4 pi over 7. Okay, so we learned a lot in these two videos. Some of it is old, so acute, obtuse, complementary, and supplementary angles should be familiar to you. And then some of it is new, positive and negative angles. Angle measures in radians, where a radian comes from, how big is a radian. Remember, not all radians are written in terms of pi. Pi is a radian measure, but so is 2, or 3, or 4. As long as it doesn't have a degree symbol and it's represented in an angle, it's a radian measure.